Hey again, it's number 2 for the week. So we're in Joseph Smith history. For most of these, I did the first one, Doctrine and Covenants, chapter 2, verse 2. But this one is Joseph Smith history. There's only one chapter, remember. So we're in verses 27 to 65 this week. And this one in particular is 27 and 28. Now I'm going to read the whole of 28 because it's like major long. But we're going to touch on that. So, cut right to it. What's happening? This is Moroni appearing to Joseph Smith. So Joseph Smith recorded this in his experience leading up to this and why he then inquired. Because you remember, there's been no revelation since Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ appeared to him. There was nothing for about 4 years, I think it was. You could probably figure it out if you really wanted to, but a space of time. And in this time, he's continued growing up, but he hasn't got any other revelation. He hasn't got anything. So he says in verse 27, I continued to pursue my common vocations in life until the 21st of September 1823. 1823. All the time suffering severe persecution at the hands of all classes of men, both religious and irreligious, because I had continued to affirm that I had seen a vision. And this is just showing that he did not give up. He's like, no, I'm not going to deny what I know. So that's there. And then in 28, he goes on to say, in that space of time, it was forbidden to join any of the sects, any other religions. He was persecuted and had all kinds of temptations, and he'd mingled with all kinds of society. Like, he'd been out there and he'd sort of, had some socializing going on. He said, I frequently fell into foolish errors and displayed the weakness of youth and the foibles of human nature, which I am sorry to say led me into divers temptations, offensive in the sight of God. In making this confession, no one need suppose me guilty of any great or malignant sin. So he hadn't done anything really, awfully bad or anything. It was just, the things that we do in youth, where we just get a little bit, tempestuous and off we go. But he says, but I was guilty of levity and sometimes associated with jovial company, not consistent that with the character ought to be maintained by one who was called of God as I had been. So he still realizes the weight of his calling. He knows what that is. And he's saying that the way he was behaving really didn't match with what God had already told him that he was going to be doing. But he said, but this will not seem very strange to anyone who recollects my youth and is acquainted with my native cheery temperament. Meaning that, of the time he was just, in New Zealand we'd call it a tutu. He's just fidget. He's just one of those kids in primary that's climbing the chairs and laughing and happy, and it's like, that's okay because they grow up to be pretty awesome people. I know a couple that I've taught in primary that were, fun. But they were hard work, but they were good people. They were good kids, and because I prayed to see them as Heavenly Father saw them, and I love them for who they are, I have great relationships with them now, and they're really wonderful people. So he's just saying that, he didn't do anything sinfully bad, just that he wasn't perhaps behaving, the best that he could have been. So he decides to pray about this again. So this is just before Moroni appears. So the question being here is, life continues, so stay true to what you know, because between times of revelation, life will simply continue. And that's just how it is. We just go about our daily things and life will continue. But stay true to what you know, like he did. He did not give up that he'd seen a vision, and he knew what his calling was. He realizes that he probably wasn't preparing the best, and thus he prays for forgiveness for it, and we'll get to that in the next one. But if your behavior is conducive to inviting the Spirit and seeking the next step, you'll know what to do. So make your behavior conducive to inviting the Spirit and keep seeking that next step. The quote from this one is kind of short, and it's from Howard B. Lee, and I know that that's way old, but it's really good, and I've always loved it, because during those times where you've had this bright light bulb moment and you're like, oh yeah, and you get flooded with all this inspiration from the revelation that you get, and then you kind of get lost in, well, what do I do next, and where do I go next, and how does this work? So I've always liked this one. Now Howard B. Lee, he said, stay true in the dark and humble in the spotlight. like that. Because sometimes when that spotlight's on you, remain humble. Don't get cocky with it, you know. Remember who you are, what your calling is. So no matter whether it's dark or bright, and whether it's your turn or whether you're waiting, whether you're seeking, whether you've already got the answer, wherever you are on that personal revelation or seeking answers quest, stay humble, stay true, and just go, know that there will be days where there won't be anything and it's just a matter of living life. And then the next step will come. So that's what Joseph Smith did. Good example of that, and that's what I thought to highlight there. So that was number 2. I'm going to do number 3. Don't know what my computer screen's doing. I've never seen it do that before. Kind of clever. I'll try if we can find something else. Oh, the blue's pretty, isn't it? Oh, that's a big word. All right. Okay. So stay tuned, and we'll get to number 3. Okay.